Suicide Squad is about a group of criminals who are put into a task force and put on special missions to fight other metahumans like Superman, etc. It's really hard to talk about this movie without talking about the main villain, because the main villain is technically considered a spoiler, so you have been warned. This time I'm going to talk about the negatives first, because a lot of the positives are the same, mainly about the characters, so I'm going to talk about the negatives first. It took a long ass time for me to care about the characters, and it was pretty bland up to that point. Because I didn't really get the characters, the fight scenes were just kind of a bunch of people fighting in a very darkly lit city, and it just didn't grab me until later in the film when they established the characters and I actually got into it. And I guess this is due to reshoots and rewrites for the movie, but some of the jokes were really unfunny and just didn't need to be in there. Like, Harley Quinn kind of says some things that aren't very funny, but she does say a lot of things that are. My main criticism is the villain of the movie, so I guess spoilers, but not really, because you can kind of find out from the trailers. The main villain of the movie is Enchantress, and she's Dr. June Moon, and she's possessed by a witch. Whenever she says the word Enchantress, she becomes Enchantress, and luckily Amanda Waller has her heart, and the only person who can control her is the person that has her heart. So that's how she uses her for special missions in the Suicide Squad. But what happens is one day Enchantress actually summons herself somehow, and she goes and summons the witch's brother, who's basically if the big metal guy from Thor had a baby with Groot and then got a bunch of LED lights strapped onto him. And she plans to take over the world by building a giant machines for the humans to worship. I don't know why. There isn't a lot of motivation behind her, and she's just a really bland villain. She kind of reminds me of Gozer from Ghostbusters, and it's just really a generic plot and a very generic villain. But on to the positive. There's one scene in the movie that tipped the scale for me. It's the bar scene from the trailer. That's where you get all the character motivation, and the movie suddenly gets really, really good, and I understand the characters' motivations, and everyone just becomes very, very likable, and you're rooting for them throughout the rest of the movie. This is the scene that made me like the movie a lot more than I would have if this scene didn't exist, because the entire movie is kind of like one scene stretched into an entire 2-hour movie, and it's very bland if you don't have any character motivation. I wish they edited the character motivation flashbacks all the way to the beginning of the movie, then they had the movie play out, and I would have liked it a lot more. Deadshot's motivation was very awesome. Harley Quinn's motivation was very awesome. I liked Killer Croc. He didn't really have a motivation or a backstory. I mean, I know he does, but they didn't display it here, but even at that, he's just a very enjoyable character to watch. Katana's story is interesting, and I wish they actually flashed back to it a little bit more, because there's a very emotional scene that they just kind of brush over, which I wish was explored a little bit more. And surprisingly, Jai Courtney is very, very good as Captain Boomerang in this movie. I didn't really like Jai Courtney in a lot of things, like Terminator Genesis. His performances usually are either bland or just really, really bad. In this movie, he's likable, he's witty, he's just great in this movie, and I really hope to see him in future movies, like maybe the Flash movie, because Captain Boomerang's a Flash villain, and he's just really great. I hope we get to see more of him. Now it's the character that everyone wants to know about, the Joker. Is he good? Is he bad? He's okay. He's definitely different. He's not Heath Ledger, he's not Cesar Romero, he's not Jack Nicholson, he's not Mark Hamill. He's a completely different type of Joker. He's more gangstery, which I guess I kind of don't like, but at the same time he's still uncomfortable and you never know what he's gonna do, and that's probably the one thing I really like about the Joker in several different incarnations of him. So is this movie better than Batman vs Superman? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you're a fan, you would say yes. If you're someone who isn't a fan, you'd probably say no. Let's look back on the following movies and see what their strong points and weak points were. Man of Steel's main problem was that the tone wasn't right and the characters weren't like themselves, but the story was pretty entertaining, but nothing special. Batman vs Superman's problem was that the story didn't make any sense and the characters acted even more unlike themselves. Suicide Squad's problem is that the story was bland and generic, but the characters were more fleshed out and realized than just like the comic books. Overall, I think this movie is a step in the right direction for DC, and I just think the story needs to be a lot better. But I think they're already improving as we speak, because Justice League looks like it has a good story, and the characters look and act a lot like the comic books. So I can tell that the people at Warner Brothers are really listening to the criticisms and trying to fix them. So I believe that even if Wonder Woman isn't a great movie, we're definitely going to get some improvement over this movie and Batman vs Superman, and we're definitely going to see a lot of improvement with Justice League. Overall, this movie was very good at characterization, but the story lacked a lot and the villain wasn't compelling. Overall, this movie gets a B-.